My name is Caroline. I am 34 years old, and my job is to look at risks and keep things safe. Last Tuesday, my daughter's third-grade teacher called me and asked if I could come into school for a quick chat before I picked up Maddie. She told me it was about Maddie's school journal, something she felt she really had to show me in person. I sat down across from Ms. Reyes in a small room that smelled of whiteboard markers and someone's leftover lunch. She slid a light purple notebook across the desk toward me. It had a unicorn sticker on the front that was starting to peel off. I knew that notebook well. Maddie took it everywhere. I opened it to marked page and read 3 lines written in my 8-year-old daughter's neatest printing. Grandma says that soon I won't have to live with my mommy anymore. My hands started to shake, and I couldn't make them stop. I read 2 more pages, stood up, thanked Ms. Reyes, and drove straight to my mother's house without calling ahead. I should tell you a little about who I really am, not the story my family tells, but the real one. I had Maddie when I was 25, got married a year later, and my marriage ended when I was 31. During those years, I went to school at night to earn my degree, while Maddie slept in her playpen beside my desk. I eventually got a job at a bank reviewing important documents, the kind of work where you read rules all day and you notice immediately when someone's story doesn't match the facts. My ex-husband, Greg, isn't a bad person. He's a decent man who struggles to stay steady when things get hard. We didn't even need lawyers to work out our custody arrangement because we could simply talk to each other. He saw Maddie every other Wednesday and 2 Saturdays a month, and it worked just fine. Then my father died. Robert passed away suddenly from a heart problem on a Sunday in April 2 years ago. He was 62 and had just mowed the grass that morning. My mother found him in his favorite chair with the TV, remote still in his hand. After the funeral, she was like a hollow shell, suddenly alone in a 4-bedroom house. My sister Diane and I took turns staying with her. When Diane couldn't manage the weekends anymore because her kids had soccer games, I offered to bring Maddie over every other weekend. It seemed like a kind thing to do. My mom lit up around Maddie. They baked together, played games, and she called Maddie her little sunshine. For a whole year, everything looked fine. I was working 50 hours a week, and I was simply glad that someone in the family had the energy to be present with my daughter. I told myself my mother's grief was making her extra loving, and that Maddie was helping her heal. I tried to believe that being a busy mother didn't make me a bad one. That was a lie I had been accepting for 18 months, and my mother had been feeding it to me one small piece at a time. There were signs, but I didn't let myself read them as signs. Maddie started coming home from her grandmother's house quieter than usual. Not sad exactly, but careful. She would watch my face when I asked about her weekend, as if she was trying to remember what she was allowed to say. She would answer, it was fine, and nothing more. Once she asked me why our apartment wasn't bigger. I told her it was just right for the 2 of us, and she said, Grandma says you could get a bigger one if you try harder. Another time I made her favorite dinner, spaghetti, and she didn't want to eat it, saying Grandma's sauce was made from scratch and mine came from a jar. It was true, but she had never cared about that before. The hardest moment came on a Tuesday night when she was brushing her teeth and said out of nowhere, when I grow up, I want to live with Grandma. I laughed it off even though it stung. I told myself kids just say things like that. The pressure began in February, for months before I saw the journal. Diane called one evening while I was giving Maddie a bath and said Mom was upset that I had canceled the last visit. But I hadn't simply canceled. Maddie had a fever, and I had even sent Mom a photo of the thermometer. Mom had never responded. Diane said Mom lives for those weekends. And when I explained about the fever, she sighed like I was being difficult and said I should have dropped Maddie off anyway because Mom had medicine at the house. Then my Aunt Brenda called, which she never does, and told me my mother was heartbroken and that I was taking away the one thing making her happy. That was the first time I heard the story said out loud. It wasn't about truth or a sick child. The story being told was that I was cold and ungrateful. A week later, my mom called, her voice soft and sweet. She asked about Maddie and my job, and then just before we hung up, she said, she would be better off here with me. You work so much, honey. She said it gently, like she was offering to carry something heavy for me. A small, exhausted part of me almost agreed. I didn't say yes, but I didn't say no either. I just changed the subject. That was my mistake. I thought it was just a comment. It was actually a plan. The night after the meeting at school, I waited for Maddie to fall asleep. I sat at the kitchen table with the purple notebook and read every single page. This time, I didn't read it like a mother. I read it like someone reviewing documents for errors. In September, it said, "Grandma says Mommy forgets to pick me up." That had never happened. Not once. In October, "Grandma says I have a room here that is mine forever." Later that same month, we played the secret game. I tell Grandma what Mommy says, and Grandma writes it down. She says it keeps me safe. My own mother had been using my child to gather information on me. In November, I read something that made me feel physically ill. Maddie had written, "Grandma showed me a book with pictures of our family. Mommy isn't in many of them. Grandma says it's because Mommy was too busy." I lined up the dates of every entry against my calendar. Every note had been written after a weekend at my mother's house. I could see my daughter's trust in me being taken apart, piece by piece, weekend by weekend. I did not sleep that night. At 7 in the morning, I was in my car. I drove to my mother's house, knowing she would be at her church group until 10. The door was unlocked. I walked through the living room and the kitchen. The guest room door was closed. When I opened it, it was no longer a guest room. There was a sign with Maddie's name on the wall. The closet was filled with clothes and shoes in a little girl's size. On the shelf sat a photo album with "Our Family" written on the cover in my mother's handwriting. I opened and found that in nearly every photograph, I had been cut out. My face was gone. Only a shadow or an elbow remained where I had once stood. The last page was blank except for 2 words, "Moving Day." Beneath the album was a folder containing a lawyer's business card and papers enrolling Maddie in the school near my mother's house. Then I heard the garage door open. My mother came in, saw me standing in that room, and her expression moved through surprise, then calculation, then anger. She asked why I was going through her home. I told her I had read Maddie's journal. She asked what journal I meant. I described the entries about the secret game, the things Maddie had been told to say to me, the room, the lawyer's card, the school enrollment papers. She didn't look guilty. She looked annoyed that I had found out. She said everything she had done was for Maddie because I worked 60 hours a week and Maddie needed stability. I told her Maddie had a stable home with me. She told me a grandmother has rights. She said she had sacrificed so much for this family and that I was being cruel to her in her own house. I picked up the photo album and the folder and walked out. I told her I was taking Maddie home and that we were finished for now. Maddie was playing in the backyard. When she saw me, she studied my face before she let herself smile, still checking to see if I was angry before she could relax. In the car, she asked if her grandma was in trouble. I told her we had just talked. She asked if she had done something wrong by writing in her journal, and I told her she had done nothing wrong at all. Then she told me something that made me pull the car over. She said Grandma had told her not to write about the secret game, but she had thought she was supposed to write what was real in a journal. I looked at her in the rearview mirror and told her she never has to keep secrets from me. She asked if she could still see her grandma. I told her honestly that we would figure out together. But for now, we were going home. That night, I built a complete timeline of everything over the previous 18 months. The pattern was clear. This was not grief or impulsiveness. It was a deliberate plan to take my daughter. The next day, I called the school counselor, who told me Maddie had been visibly anxious and had even asked whether moms can lose their children. Within 2 days, my entire family was calling me. All of them with the same story, that I was being cruel to my mother. They knew nothing about the journal or the room. They only knew the version my mother had given them. Nobody once asked what my daughter had to say. I later found a secret group chat on Maddie's iPad. My mother, my sister, and my aunt had been messaging for months, keeping notes on me and calling them evidence. My mother had even written that I would thank her one day. I spent that Saturday organizing everything I had. The journal, the screenshots, the school enrollment papers, the photo album. Then I went to see a lawyer named Pat Olson. She told me my mother's plan would not succeed in court because the law firmly supports parents over grandparents. She helped me update the custody arrangement and suggested adding a neutral party to manage the education fund my father had left for Maddie, so no one could later claim I had misused it. I felt stronger than I had in months. On the day of my mother's 65th birthday party, I went to her house without Maddie. The room was full of relatives. My mother gave a speech about how much she loved Maddie and how heartbroken she was that I was keeping them apart. She even said outright that she believed Maddie would be better off living with her. Everyone looked at her with sympathy. Then I stood up. I placed a purple notebook on the table and told everyone what was inside it. I described the secret game, the things Maddie had been coached to say, the bedroom with Maddie's name on the door, the lawyer's card, the photo album with my face cut out, and the secret group chat. The room went completely silent. My mother became furious and started to cry. She said she would get a lawyer. I told her I already had one and that I was prepared. I told her I wasn't doing this to punish her. I was doing it to protect my daughter from being taught to fear the truth. Some people in that room began to understand. Diane slipped out without a word. My mother's friends started to leave. I told my mother before I left that she was not losing her home or her financial security, but that if she wanted to see Maddie again, she would need to attend therapy and follow boundaries I set. She would have to go through me, not around me. I left the party and picked up Maddie from Greg's house. We have settled into a new way of living since then. Maddie is in therapy, and she is doing so much better. She sleeps through the night again. She seems lighter. She has a new notebook now, a green one, and she wrote in it recently that what is real today is our house, and spaghetti from a jar. We both laughed about that for a long time. Protecting your child is one of the hardest forms of love there is, but it is the most important one. I learned to trust my daughter and to stand up for our family. If someone ever tries to make your child afraid of you, please believe your child.